Do not erase his memories, the old woman pleaded through tears. If you take those away, you are not questioning a prisoner anymore. You are murdering the only person my son has left. The recording ended with a sharp click, and every officer inside Black Vault 7 laughed except one man. Nathan Brooks never even looked up. His wrists rested inside magnetic restraints bolted to the cold steel chair. His posture relaxed as if he were waiting for a delayed flight, instead of an interrogation that had broken warlords, spies, and military commanders from across known space. The observation room overlooked the chamber through a thick pane of polarized crystal. Chief Interrogator Kaelor folded his hands behind his back and studied the human with quiet satisfaction. That is him, one of the junior technicians asked. Former United States Naval Intelligence, Kaelor replied. Captured while evacuating a civilian convoy near the Orion Corridor. According to our analysts, he carries strategic information worth more than an entire battle fleet. Director Lyra Sun stepped beside him, her expression unreadable. Earth has refused every diplomatic exchange. They would rather lose one man than reveal weakness. Kaelor smiled. Then we shall let the prisoner reveal it for them. Nathan finally lifted his eyes toward the mirrored glass. He could not see the people behind it, yet somehow his gaze settled exactly where Kaelor stood. One of the technicians shifted uneasily. Does he know we are here? Kaelor gave a dismissive wave. Humans are observant. Nothing more. Inside the chamber, 2 guards secured the final restraint around Nathan's ankles. One of them leaned closer. You should be afraid, the alien muttered through the translation device. Nathan answered with a tired smile. Long day. The guard frowned. What? You keep checking the clock, Nathan said calmly. That usually means someone promised you'd be home for dinner. The guard instinctively glanced toward the wall display before catching himself. Kaelor noticed the tiny exchange and chuckled. Interesting. Even now he wants conversation. Isolation always makes them seek connection. Director Sun folded her arms. Or maybe he is gathering information. From a wall clock? Kaelor laughed. Humans romanticize small victories. Give him one. The massive circular door sealed shut with a deep metallic thud. The lights dimmed until only a pale white ring illuminated the chair. Mechanical arms lowered from the ceiling carrying elegant neural interface bands unlike anything Earth had ever built. Every civilization in the coalition feared the Brain Lattice. It did not torture. It did not threaten. It simply opened every locked door inside a mind. Empires had fallen because one frightened prisoner remembered a password. Generals had surrendered because forgotten coordinates resurfaced. No one had ever resisted it longer than 9 minutes. Kaelor activated the console. Begin baseline scan. Soft blue light flowed across Nathan's forehead. His pulse remained steady. Breathing steady. Eyes relaxed. Increase synchronization, Kaelor ordered. He should already be searching for an escape. A technician frowned at the monitor. Sir, he is not. Impossible. His stress response is almost non-existent. Kaelor leaned closer to the display. Then he has accepted defeat. Nathan closed his eyes as the neural field expanded around him. After several silent seconds, he spoke in an even voice that carried through every speaker in the room. You built this machine because you think every mind is a locked room. Kaelor pressed the communication switch. And yours is no different. Nathan slowly opened his eyes again. There was no anger in them. No fear. Only the quiet expression of someone who had already reached the end of a conversation everyone else had just begun. No, he said. You just haven't realized you're the one about to walk inside. The first memory arrived exactly as the Brain Lattice predicted. A little white house outside Columbus, Ohio. A rusty pickup truck parked in the driveway. Rain tapping against the garage roof while a middle-aged man tightened a bolt beneath an old engine. The sensors lit up with confidence. Memory confirmed, one technician announced. Childhood. Approximately 9 years old. Kaelor watched the display with quiet satisfaction. There. Every mind begins the same way. Comfort. Safety. Familiar patterns. Nathan sat perfectly still. His breathing never changed. His eyes remained fixed on the faint circle of light above him. Expand the scan, Kaelor ordered. I want emotional anchors. New images appeared. A woman laughing while pouring fresh coffee into a chipped blue mug. A golden retriever chasing a baseball across a backyard. Fireflies drifting through warm summer air. The system highlighted every detail, assigning emotional value with astonishing precision. Director Lyra's son nodded toward the monitors. Nothing military. Not yet, Kaelor replied. Humans always bury what matters beneath sentiment. The neural processors accelerated. Thousands of invisible calculations raced through Nathan's memories, searching for classified locations, encrypted communications, fleet movements, command structures. Instead, another ordinary scene appeared. Nathan sat inside a crowded diner wearing a faded football jacket while arguing with his younger sister about who owed their mother $20 after losing a family bet. Several technicians laughed quietly. "This is the legendary intelligence officer," one asked. "He remembers pancakes." Kaelor never smiled. "Keep digging." The brain lattice increased synchronization again. This time the memories shifted faster. High school graduation. Driving through snow. Learning to parallel park. His first apartment. Grocery shopping at midnight. Standing in line at a hardware store. Every image felt painfully ordinary. "Where are the military files?" Directorson asked. "The machine cannot be wrong." Kaelor folded his arms tighter. "It is not wrong. He is compartmentalizing naturally." "Continue." Nathan finally spoke without opening his eyes. "You know what the funny thing is?" Nobody answered. "People think the important days are the ones they remember forever." His voice remained calm, almost conversational. "Most lives are built on Tuesdays." One technician frowned. "What does that mean?" Kaelor ignored the comment. Maximum depth. The chamber filled with a soft mechanical hum. The light surrounding Nathan brightened until it almost resembled daylight. The monitors suddenly exploded with hundreds of overlapping memories. Thanksgiving dinners blended into military classrooms. Childhood birthdays dissolved into airport terminals. Baseball games merged with satellite maps before disappearing into family road trips across Kentucky and Tennessee. Every sequence connected, then split apart again before analysts could isolate a single thread. "Stop," one technician whispered. "I cannot stabilize the timeline." Another operator looked up from his station. "The memories are reorganizing themselves." "That is impossible," Kaelor snapped. "Human memory is linear." "Apparently not this one." Director's son stepped closer to the largest display. "Can the machine separate authentic recollection from imagination?" "It always has before," the technician answered quietly. Kaelor activated the chamber speaker. "Nathan Brooks." Nathan slowly opened his eyes. "Yes." "You are resisting." Nathan looked genuinely puzzled. "No, then explain this." Nathan glanced toward the ceiling as though listening to distant rain. "When I was a kid, my father used to tell me something every Saturday." Kaelor waited. "He said memories are not filing cabinets." Nathan smiled faintly. "They are neighborhoods. You never reach one house without passing 100 others." Silence settled over the control room. The brain lattice emitted a warning tone that nobody in the facility had ever heard before. Across every monitor, new neural pathways continued branching faster than the processors could map them. One after another, the system began marking ordinary memories as restricted data, while routine family moments suddenly received the same security classification normally reserved for military secrets. A young technician swallowed hard. "Chief, I do not think we are getting closer." Kaelor stared at Nathan without blinking. "No," he murmured. "We are only getting started." Nobody in Black Vault 7 noticed the exact moment the room became quieter. The machines were still running. The cooling systems still hummed behind the walls. Data continued streaming across every monitor. Yet something had changed. The technicians stopped making casual remarks. Even the constant tapping of keyboards slowed until the only sound left was the brain lattice searching for patterns it could no longer explain. Kaelor leaned over the central console. "Run comparative analysis against every known species." A technician obeyed immediately. "No match." "Expand the database." "Already expanding." Several seconds passed. Still no match. Director Lyra's son watched Nathan through the observation glass. He had not moved more than an inch since the session began. His shoulders stayed loose. His breathing never accelerated. He looked less like a prisoner and more like someone patiently waiting for a meeting to end. "He should be exhausted," she said quietly. "Every subject is by now." Kaelor refused to look away from the monitors. "He is hiding it." Nathan spoke before either of them touched the communication panel. "Actually, I am just bored." The room froze. Kaelor slowly pressed the speaker control. "You cannot hear us." Nathan shrugged. "Maybe not every word." A faint smile crossed his face. People breathe differently when they think they are winning. One technician instinctively held his breath. Another shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Kaelor noticed both reactions and frowned. Continue the scan. New commands raced into the system. Instead of digging deeper into memory, the Brain Lattice attempted to map how Nathan connected ideas. The holographic display blossomed into a web of glowing lines. Childhood memories linked to navigation lessons. A camping trip connected to advanced mathematics. His mother's apple pie somehow intersected with naval logistics. Nothing stayed where the software expected it to remain. This is nonsense, one analyst muttered. Those memories should not be related. Nathan quietly answered, they are if you live them. Director's son glanced toward Kaelor. What if human memory is organized by meaning instead of chronology? Kaelor dismissed the suggestion. Every intelligent mind follows structure. Nathan chuckled softly. Sure, just not the structure you wrote in your textbooks. The lead technician suddenly raised his hand. Chief, something else is happening. Report. The Brain Lattice is beginning to predict memories before they appear. Kaelor nodded. That is normal. No, sir. The technician swallowed. It predicts one memory, but another arrives instead. Every single time. Kaelor stepped closer. Show me. A simulation appeared on the largest screen. The machine estimated Nathan would remember classified military training after recalling his father's garage. Instead, the next memory showed a rainy afternoon inside a public library where 12-year-old Nathan spent hours helping an elderly volunteer organize history books. The prediction engine recalculated. This time it expected college. Instead, Nathan remembered teaching his little cousin how to ride a bicycle. Again, the system recalculated. Again, it failed. The percentage of prediction accuracy dropped from 98% to 74, then 52, then 31. Nobody said a word. The Brain Lattice had never fallen below 95 with any known civilization. Director's son folded her arms tighter. It is learning the wrong person. Nathan slowly looked toward the ceiling lights. No, he said. It keeps assuming I make decisions for the same reasons you would. Kaelor's confidence began to crack, though only slightly. Every choice has a pattern. Nathan nodded. Of course. His expression remained calm. The mistake is believing you already know what the pattern is. Before Kaelor could answer, every display in the control room flashed amber. The prediction engine automatically suspended itself. Across the main screen, a message appeared that no one in Black Vault 7 had ever seen before. Cognitive model invalid. Recalibration required. The silence that followed lasted only a few seconds, but it was long enough for Kaelor to realize something deeply unsettling. For the first time in his career, the machine was no longer studying the prisoner. It was trying to relearn what it meant to understand a human mind. Kaelor refused to acknowledge the warning on the screen. He reached forward and dismissed it with a single motion. Run the secondary protocol. The technicians exchanged uncertain glances. One of them cleared his throat. Chief, the Brain Lattice has never requested a cognitive reset before. Then today it learns something new, Kaelor replied. Director Lyra-san watched Nathan through the glass. Or perhaps we do. The chamber lights shifted from pale white to deep blue as hidden emitters activated around the circular room. Magnetic restraints tightened by another fraction of an inch. A low vibration rolled across the floor. Nathan looked around slowly, noticing the subtle changes. That is new, he said. Kaelor answered through the speaker. The first phase relied on observation. The second removes choice. Nathan smiled faintly. That depends on who still has one. Kaelor ignored the comment. Deploy the resonance field. For mechanical columns rose from beneath the floor, surrounding Nathan's chair. Invisible waves swept across the chamber, designed to synchronize every electrical signal inside a living brain. The technology had one purpose. Eliminate uncertainty. Force complete neural alignment. Every species tested before had become mentally transparent within minutes. Data flooded across the monitors. Heart rate stable. Oxygen stable. Neural activity expanding. A technician frowned. Chief, the field is amplifying something unexpected. Increase power by 15%. Already done. Instead of compressing Nathan's neural activity into predictable pathways, the display exploded into thousands of new connections. Every increase in power produced even greater complexity. Kaelor narrowed his eyes. Impossible. Nathan leaned back as much as the restraints allowed. You ever try squeezing water with your fist? Nobody answered. The harder you squeeze, the faster it slips away. Before Kaelor could respond, warning lights flashed across the chamber. One of the resonance columns emitted a sharp crack before shutting itself down. Column 3 offline, a technician reported. Compensate with the remaining units. Another pulse filled the room. This time, all 4 support drones stationed near the ceiling suddenly lost synchronization. They drifted erratically for several seconds before emergency stabilization software regained control. Director Sun stepped closer to the console. The field is interfering with nearby systems. No, Kaelor said quietly. Everything else is reacting to him. At that moment, one of the security officers rushed into the observation room. Director, we have a containment issue in Corridor 9. Explain. 2 maintenance drones suddenly entered defensive mode. Nobody was injured, but security teams are responding. Director Sun frowned. Coincidence. The officer hesitated. The system logs show the malfunction began the exact second the resonance output increased. Kaelor dismissed the report with visible irritation. Keep the corridor sealed. Nathan listened carefully as distant alarms echoed faintly through the chamber walls. Sounds busy out there. Kaelor pressed the speaker. You believe you are affecting this facility? No, Nathan answered calmly. I think your machines are affecting each other. Director Sin looked toward the growing list of technical failures appearing across multiple departments. Climate controls, navigation servers, internal communications. None had stopped functioning completely, but each had recorded brief, unexplained interruptions within the last 60 seconds. The lead systems engineer spoke quietly. Every disruption traces back to the Brain Lattice network. Kaelor's jaw tightened. Disconnect non-essential systems. That will reduce processing power. Do it. Massive circuit breakers isolated entire sections of Black Vault 7 from the central network. The alarms faded. The drone stabilized. Corridor 9 reported normal operation again. Everyone inside the control room exhaled in relief except Nathan. He simply watched the observation window with quiet curiosity. Interesting, he said. You just defended the station from your own equipment. Kaelor stared through the glass without speaking. For the first time since Nathan arrived, he realized the interrogation was no longer confined to one room. Every decision he made now carried consequences beyond the prisoner, and somewhere deep inside, a question he had never asked before began to take shape. What if the greatest threat inside Black Vault 7 had never been the man sitting in the chair, but the certainty that they already understood him? Director Lyra Sun ordered a temporary halt, and for the first time since Nathan Brooks had entered Black Vault 7, every machine around him went silent. The room felt strangely empty without the constant hum of scanners. Nathan slowly looked around before settling back into the chair as if the break had been scheduled all along. Kaelor remained inside the observation room, staring at pages of diagnostics that refused to agree with each other. One report claimed the Brain Lattice had encountered corrupted data. Another insisted the hardware had performed flawlessly. A third suggested the human brain itself had generated neural structures that did not fit any recognized cognitive model. Run a background search on Brooks, Kaelor said without taking his eyes off the display. Everything. A technician hesitated. We already have his military record. I did not ask for his military record. Several minutes later, another screen illuminated. Public school transcripts, civilian employment records, volunteer organizations, tax filings, medical examinations, old neighborhood interviews. Nothing extraordinary appeared. Nathan Brooks looked painfully ordinary. Director Sun studied the profile. He coached Little League during the off-season. For 3 years, the technician answered. He also volunteered at a veterans hospital twice a month. Kaelor frowned. Where is the deception? Nobody answered because there was nothing to find. Every record supported the last. The man sitting in the interrogation chair had spent most of his life helping neighbors, fixing broken fences, driving friends to airports, and quietly serving his country without public attention. Kaelor folded his arms tighter. Nobody this valuable lives a life this simple. Nathan spoke through the chamber speaker before anyone activated it. You would be surprised how much important work gets done by people who never make the news. Kaelor walked into the interrogation chamber for the first time. The guards instinctively stepped aside. Standing only a few feet away, He studied Nathan without the protection of glass between them. Tell me something, Kaelor said. Were you trained to resist interrogation? Nathan looked directly into his eyes. Yes. Kaelor smiled slightly. Finally, an honest answer. Nathan nodded. You asked the right question. Kaelor circled the chair slowly. What was the training? Nathan remained quiet for several seconds before answering. Most people think resistance means learning how to hide secrets. Kaelor waited. It does not. Nathan's voice stayed calm. It means learning which truths to hand someone first. Kaelor stopped walking. Explain. Nathan smiled faintly. If you spend all your time chasing the wrong answers, you stop asking the dangerous questions. Before Kaelor could respond, one of the technicians rushed into the chamber carrying a data tablet. Chief, we recovered something from his service history. Kaelor took it immediately. The classified file had been buried beneath multiple layers of authorization. Across the top appeared a single designation: Cognitive Resilience Program. Status: completed. Participants: redacted. Curriculum: redacted. Evaluation: redacted. Only one sentence remained visible beneath the blacked-out sections. Subject demonstrated advanced resistance to external cognitive manipulation through adaptive psychological redirection. Kaelor read it twice. Director Sun looked over his shoulder. Psychological redirection? Nathan quietly exhaled. Now you are getting warmer. Kaelor slowly lowered the tablet. For the first time, the interrogation no longer looked like a routine intelligence operation. Somewhere on Earth, someone had anticipated that an enemy might one day try to rewrite a human mind, and instead of teaching their people how to build stronger walls, they had taught them how to quietly reshape the battlefield itself. As Kaelor looked back into Nathan's calm blue eyes, one unsettling thought refused to leave him. What if the real interrogation had not started when the Brain Lattice activated, but the moment he decided he understood the prisoner sitting in front of him? Kaelor did not sleep that night. Every report he reviewed pointed toward the same impossible conclusion, yet he refused to accept it. By sunrise inside the station's artificial cycle, he had reached a different answer. If Nathan Brooks had been trained to redirect an interrogation, then the solution was simple. Stop interrogating him. Director Lyra's son met him outside the control room. You look like you already made your decision. Kaelor nodded. We have been treating him like a witness. He is a prisoner. Exactly. That was our mistake. He tapped a command into his tablet. Prepare Protocol Black Echo. Several technicians looked up in alarm. One finally spoke. Chief, Black Echo has never been authorized on a living subject. Then today will be the first. Inside the chamber, Nathan noticed the lights changing again. The familiar white glow disappeared, replaced by a soft amber light that felt strangely warm. The mechanical restraints loosened just enough for him to shift his shoulders. The heavy chamber door opened, and instead of armed guards, 2 service drones rolled inside carrying a small table, a chair, and a steaming cup of coffee. Nathan raised one eyebrow. This is different. Kaelor walked into the room alone and sat across from him. You once coached Little League. Nathan looked at the coffee before meeting Kaelor's eyes. That is public information. You volunteered at a veterans hospital. Also public. Kaelor leaned forward. Tell me about your father. Nathan remained silent. Kaelor smiled. No machines. No scanners. No neural fields. Just 2 people talking. Nathan glanced at the untouched coffee. You are trying to make this feel normal. Would that bother you? Nathan answered with a small smile. No. It worries me. Kaelor ignored the remark. Black Echo does not search memories. It studies decisions. Nathan did not react. Kaelor continued speaking in an easy tone. Every conversation contains thousands of tiny choices. Where your eyes move. How long you pause. Which words you avoid. You may fool a machine, Nathan, but eventually every person reveals themselves. Nathan finally picked up the cup, smelled the coffee, then set it back down without taking a sip. You practiced that speech. Kaelor blinked once. Excuse me. Twice in front of a mirror. Nathan tilted his head slightly. You changed the last sentence because the first version sounded arrogant. Director Sun watched through the observation window as Kaelor's expression hardened for only a fraction of a second. One technician whispered, how could he possibly know that? Another quietly replayed the security recordings from Kaelor's private office earlier that morning. The room fell silent. Kaelor had indeed rehearsed the conversation twice, changing the final sentence before leaving. Director Sin slowly lowered the tablet in her hands. He guessed. One analyst insisted. Maybe. Another analyst shook his head. Or maybe he read the chief. Kaelor refused to let the moment slip away. Interesting observation. Nathan shrugged. People are predictable when they are trying not to be. Kaelor suddenly stood. Enough. His calm voice returned with surprising confidence. Seal the chamber. The doors closed instantly. Hidden projectors emerged from the walls, forming a glowing sphere around Nathan's chair. Director Sun frowned. What is he doing? Kaelor spoke without looking away from the prisoner. If I cannot enter his mind, then I will force him into mine. Every display inside Black Vault 7 switched to live synchronization mode. The Brain Lattice was no longer targeting Nathan alone. It was preparing to establish a direct cognitive bridge between interrogator and prisoner, a procedure so experimental that no one could predict which mind would reach the other first. Nathan looked at the shimmering field surrounding him, then slowly turned his attention back to Kaelor. For the first time since his capture, the faint smile disappeared from his face. Chief, he said quietly, that is the first decision you have made today that I wish you had not. The synchronization countdown reached 0, yet nothing dramatic happened. No flashing lights. No violent surge through the chamber. Just silence. Nathan sat perfectly still while a thin band of pale blue light surrounded both him and Kaelor. Every monitor inside Black Vault 7 switched to a shared cognitive display. Director Lyra Sun folded her arms as technicians watched thousands of neural signals flowing between two minds for the first time in the station's history. Connection established, the lead technician announced. Both subjects are stable. Kaelor allowed himself a small smile. You see, Nathan? Every mind can be reached. Nathan looked at him for a long moment before quietly asking, Are you sure you know which direction the door opens? Kaelor ignored the question. Begin reciprocal observation. The Brain Lattice immediately translated emotional patterns into visual models. Kaelor expected military strategies, hidden codes, emergency protocols, and encrypted memories to appear. Instead, the first image was a little girl laughing while trying to catch fireflies in a glass jar during a warm summer evening. The scene disappeared almost instantly, replaced by an elderly man quietly reading a newspaper outside a small-town diner. Then came a high school baseball field, a crowded grocery store before Thanksgiving, a hospital waiting room, a church picnic. Ordinary moments passed one after another, connected by faces, voices, and quiet conversations that seemed completely unrelated to intelligence work. One technician frowned. There is still nothing classified. Another whispered, maybe there never was. Kaelor shook his head. No. Keep following the emotional links. The system obeyed. Every ordinary memory expanded into dozens more. A neighbor borrowing a ladder. A teacher staying after school to help a struggling student. A mechanic refusing payment from a young soldier about to deploy overseas. Director Sun stared at the display. Why does every memory involve someone helping someone else? Nathan answered without looking away from Kaelor. Because that is how most people actually live. The words lingered in the room longer than anyone expected. Then something changed. The Brain Lattice automatically highlighted recurring neural pathways inside Nathan's mind. Instead of fear, aggression, or secrecy, the strongest pattern carried a simple internal question repeated across hundreds of different memories. What does the other person need right now? The technicians exchanged confused looks. That cannot be correct. Run it again. They did. The answer never changed. Kaelor leaned closer to the monitor. He evaluates every situation through other people first. Nathan nodded. Most of us do. Kaelor frowned. That is inefficient. Nathan smiled faintly. Maybe for an empire. Before Kaelor could answer, the Brain Lattice issued another unexpected alert. Attention shift detected. The neural flow had changed direction. Instead of extracting Nathan's cognitive structure, the system had begun mapping Kaelor's own decision-making process in equal detail. Director Sun looked sharply toward the lead technician. Why is it scanning the chief? It should not be. Can you stop it? Fingers raced across the controls. No. The bridge is symmetrical. Whatever one mind receives, the other receives as well. Kaelor's confidence wavered for the first time since activating Black Echo. He suddenly noticed details he had ignored before. Nathan had never once tried to dominate the conversation. Never argued. Never threatened. Never resisted the connection itself. He had only warned him not to open it. Nathan met his eyes with quiet sympathy instead of triumph. "You thought this machine only transferred information," he said softly. "It also transfers perspective." The room fell completely silent as Kaelor instinctively looked back toward the observation window. For reasons he could not explain, the frightened expressions on his own staff suddenly felt painfully familiar, as though he were seeing them through someone else's eyes. And in that unsettling moment, he realized the brain lattice had not failed at all. It had done exactly what it was designed to do. It had simply connected two minds, leaving one terrifying question hanging over everyone watching. If Nathan had remained completely calm throughout the entire process, then what exactly had Kaelor just allowed into his own way of thinking? The order to terminate the synchronization came from Director Lyra Sun herself. "Disconnect them. Now." The technicians rushed across their consoles, but every command returned the same answer. "Connection active. Safe termination unavailable." A nervous silence settled over Black Vault 7. No alarms blared. No systems failed. Everything was working exactly as designed, except nobody controlled it anymore. Kaelor remained standing inside the chamber, staring at Nathan with an expression that had quietly changed from confidence to uncertainty. He looked toward the observation window, then back at the prisoner. "What is happening?" Nathan answered in the same calm voice he had used since the beginning. "You wanted to understand how humans think." Kaelor frowned. "That is not an answer. It is the only answer." Director Sun activated the chamber speaker. "Nathan Brooks, if you know how to stop this, tell us." Nathan looked toward the glass. "You keep assuming something is attacking you. Is it not?" she asked. Nathan slowly shook his head. "No. Your machines were built to remove distance between minds. They are doing exactly that." One of the senior analysts suddenly called out from the back of the room. "Director, look at the emotional synchronization logs." Every display switched to a new graph. Instead of showing Nathan's neural activity overwhelming Kaelor's, the data revealed something entirely different. The brain lattice had equalized emotional perspective between both participants. Kaelor was not losing his mind. He was experiencing the world through a framework he had never possessed before. Director Sun stared at the report. "Empathy, transfer." Another technician looked stunned. The machine interpreted human cognition as the most stable reference model. Kaelor stepped backward. For a brief moment, he remembered the frightened face of the elderly woman from the recording they had played before Nathan's interrogation. Except now it no longer felt like archived evidence. It felt personal. He remembered the mechanic refusing payment from a young soldier, the baseball field, the hospital waiting room. The ordinary moments he had dismissed as meaningless suddenly carried weight that numbers could never explain. He closed his eyes. "Why?" he whispered. "Why do these memories matter?" Nathan answered without hesitation. "Because people are never only the worst day of their lives." Nobody spoke. The room seemed smaller somehow. Director Sun quietly replayed the cognitive logs from the first session. They had spent 3 days searching for secret codes while ignoring thousands of moments that had quietly built the man sitting before them. Another analyst compared Nathan's profile against every previous prisoner processed by the brain lattice. The result appeared almost immediately. All previous scans had been optimized to identify fear, deception, and strategic value. None had ever been calibrated to understand trust, loyalty, kindness, or sacrifice as meaningful cognitive structures. "Director," the analyst said softly, "we have been asking the wrong questions for decades." Nathan nodded slightly. "Exactly." Director Sun slowly turned toward Kaelor. "Chief, look at the final diagnostic." Kaelor read the last page in silence. The brain lattice had generated an automatic recommendation based on accumulated observations. Human cognitive structure incompatible with coercive interrogation model. Non-forced dialogue recommended for maximum information accuracy. Kaelor lowered the tablet. Every lesson he had trusted throughout his career collapsed beneath one simple conclusion. Force had not failed because humans were stronger. It had failed because the machine itself had concluded that understanding could not be extracted the way his civilization believed. Nathan looked at Kaelor with neither satisfaction nor anger. "You kept trying to unlock a door," he said quietly. "You never noticed it was never locked." Director Sun took one slow breath before issuing the order nobody expected to hear. "Suspend every brain lattice interrogation across the facility until further review." The room froze. Even Kaelor looked at her in disbelief. She met his eyes without hesitation. "If this machine has been teaching us the wrong lessons all these years," she said, "then before we question another prisoner, we need to question ourselves." Meanwhile, Nathan remained quietly seated inside the chamber, still restrained, still surrounded by guards. Yet for the first time since arriving at Black Vault 7, everyone in the room realized the only person who no longer needed to prove anything was the prisoner. The restraints were finally released with a quiet metallic click. Nobody celebrated. Nobody spoke. Nathan Brooks slowly stood for the first time in 3 days and stretched his shoulders as though he had just finished a long flight. The guards instinctively stepped back, not because they had been ordered to, but because something inside them no longer viewed the quiet human as a threat that could be measured by weapons or walls. Director Lyra Sun entered the chamber herself. She stopped a few feet away and looked directly at Nathan. "You are free to walk to the transport bay." Nathan looked at the open doorway. That was not the mission, was it? She lowered her eyes for a moment. "No." Nathan gave a small nod. "I did not think so." Behind the observation glass, Kaelor remained alone. The Brain Lattice had been powered down for almost an hour, yet he continued replaying the recordings from the interrogation. Not the military files they never found, not the system failures. He kept replaying ordinary moments. A father repairing an old truck because replacing it was too expensive. A baseball coach staying late after practice because one child needed extra encouragement. A stranger returning a lost wallet without expecting a reward. Thousands of tiny decisions that no empire had ever considered strategically valuable. He finally understood why the machine had failed. It had been designed to measure what civilizations feared losing. Humans had unknowingly filled their minds with something entirely different. They measured life by the people they refused to leave behind. Kaelor quietly walked into the corridor just as Nathan reached the final security gate. The guards looked toward their chief, waiting for instructions. None came. Kaelor approached until only a few feet separated them. For several long seconds, neither man spoke. Finally, Kaelor broke the silence. "There is something I do not understand." Nathan waited. "When the connection opened, you could have destroyed everything I believed." Nathan smiled gently. "No. Why not?" Nathan looked down the empty hallway before answering. "Because changing someone's mind is not the same as defeating them." Kaelor lowered his head. The words landed harder than any accusation could have. "Then why warn me?" Nathan's expression remained calm. "Because once you truly see another person, you cannot choose to have never seen them." The corridor fell silent again. Kaelor slowly reached into his coat and removed the small data tablet containing the final Brain Lattice report. Without another word, he erased the entire interrogation archive except for one sentence. "Human cognitive structure requires understanding before judgment." He saved only that line. Director Sun watched from the far end of the hallway. "The council will ask what happened here," she said. Kaelor looked toward the transport shuttle waiting beyond the station doors. "Tell them the truth." "Which truth?" Kaelor answered without hesitation. "We never captured the most important thing humans possess." Nathan stepped onto the shuttle ramp and paused before the door closed. He looked back only once. "You know," he said with a faint smile, "my father used to tell me that every person leaves something behind when they walk away." Kaelor quietly asked, "What did you leave here?" Nathan looked around the silent station one last time. "Nothing." He smiled a little wider. "You found it yourselves." The shuttle lifted away from Black Vault 7 and disappeared into the stars. Weeks later, every Brain Lattice facility across the coalition suspended forced interrogations pending a complete review. Not because humanity had conquered an empire, not because one prisoner had escaped, but because a civilization that believed every mind could be broken had been forced to confront a far more unsettling possibility. The strongest mind was never the one that could resist control. It was the one that refused to stop seeing the humanity in someone else, even after they had forgotten how to see it in themselves. And for the first time in generations, the silence that spread across the galaxy was not fear. It was reflection.